Good. I love your background.
Thank you. Well, I guess
Yes.
it's good because you can only see up to there, and there's like a window above me. So I was really
Oh,
worried
okay.
that you were going to get like this big bright light coming in your face. But
Yeah, it's very,
worked out.
very angelic background.
Yeah, it's I think I got it off Amazon or something. It was the most unicorny thing I could find. So
I love it. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Soul Sessions podcast. I'm here with my beautiful friend, galactic friend, Shannon Hatton. And Shannon, I tried to merge your first name and your last name.
it doesn't work very well after
No.
that one.
Shannon is a intuitive healer and a channel of unity love, a divine channel of unity love. Oh, Shannon, I think can you see me?
I can see you.
Okay, you buffered for a minute. Okay.
Okay. Sorry. Dude, this is my first time using the iPad for this too. So if everyone's I'm sorry to anyone watching if it's messed up.
It'll all work out. It'll be fine.
Okay.
So I was telling them a little bit about you. I'm going to share your services, and I have them written down so I remember all of them. Chakra Cleansing, Wake Up to Your Heart Sessions, and Astro-Oracle Therapy. Yes.
Yeah.
And then you have two podcasts. You have Sevens with Shannon and HP3, co-host of HP3.
Yeah, that's right. With
Yes.
Marie, with Shannon and Marie. Nice little rhyme there.
Yes.
Yeah, so HP3 is kind of more of our very like esoteric, like deep dive into stuff. Luckily, Marie is much, much smarter than me. So she can bring all that good stuff to it. And it's a really nice dynamic. And then Sevens is my own personal little thing. I almost felt like baby, but like I don't even know. It's not like a baby yet.
It's like your little creation.
I don't know. I don't know what it is just yet. It's kind of like whatever so far. It's been sharing my story a lot so far, doing a couple of guided meditations. I did share one like trip report on mushrooms.
Oh, great. Okay.
Into later, but so it's kind of a little all over the place, but just, you know, sometimes we just need to do that thing to get ourselves out there and like, you know, put ourselves out, like take that leap of faith. So that's kind of what Sevens is for now, and hopefully it'll keep evolving.
Oh, beautiful. I like things that are kind of all over the place because that's how I live and function. So I love finding other creators like that. It keeps my attention, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Can I ask you a little sidebar question?
Yeah.
Okay, so if there are people out there that are wanting to create their own thing, like whether it's like TikTok videos or podcasts, like what would you recommend for confidence in doing that?
I would say like it really is that leap of faith. It's like the more you think about it and think about it and think about it, the more that you're talking yourself out of it and getting in that self-doubt and that imposter syndrome. A lot of people, you know, have that thought of like, oh, someone else has already done it. There's already so many people out there doing that. But the reality is that like we are all so different and so unique for the reason of sharing that different perspective and to share that from all different sides of this beautiful thing that we're all living together. And so your perspective is so needed out there. And so just to get yourself, you know, out there, take baby steps if you want to. Like if you don't want to be on camera and do things like that right away. Like I still do some videos when I'm just not feeling myself quite as much, where it's just like, there's more cards in this one, or like maybe I'm, you know, only a couple seconds of my face on the camera or whatever it is, or here's my dog. But it's really just like pressing that play button and just kind of getting yourself out there and just trusting that, trusting yourself, trusting in that unique voice that you have, and that whatever does come out will be exactly what's meant to come out to the world.
I absolutely love that. Just sometimes you just have to like look fear in the face and just be like, I'm going to do it anyway. Right.
Yeah.
Because like
exactly.
that's forward movement, like progress. And I love how you're saying like baby step it.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot of times we compare ourselves to people that have been doing that thing for a long time, but they were exactly where you're at right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And like I'm not, you know, necessarily the one, like you do so many more, you know, videos and put yourself out there. I'm maybe still in like the baby step process. Because I haven't like, you know, I just started a YouTube and I just started these things. So it just shows that, you know, like start with one thing. Like you don't have to go on every single platform at once. Like it's good, you know, if you're trying to build a brand, then if you have something you really love, you know, get those names down or get those logins so you have them for later. But you don't have to start putting a video on every single platform every day. You can do one platform, see how that goes, and then build your confidence and then, you know, keep going.
That's beautiful. That's what I did. I didn't even have enough content or the confidence to do like 30-second videos.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah. So I just started like on one platform, 30-second videos, and like worked my way up. And so like everybody starts at that basis point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone starts somewhere, and that's the best point to make, is like everyone you see out there that has like thousands and thousands of followers started with none at one point. And so you just got to build that and trust in yourself. Like, just get rid of that, you know, that self-doubt, that judgment voice. It's a constant thing. It's constantly being mindful. But this is such a great way to practice that, because every time that you're thinking, oh, I'd really like to share this thing, and that little voice jumps in, take that as an opportunity to start rewiring your brain and say, no, I can do that thing. And now I'm going to show that little voice by doing it right now.
That's great. Like retraining your brain, like your subconscious, and like, hey, I know this is scary, but it's going to be beneficial to me. It's going to help me grow and like align more with myself. It helps your confidence. Like the more you do it, the more you like really start to trust yourself and like the things that you're saying and what you have to bring to the table. Like it helps in so many different other ways.
Yeah. And there's always going to be that imposter syndrome. Like even the people, like we listen to Jessa, we listen to whoever, like these people that have been doing it for so long, or go on stage and do other things outside of, you know, the social sphere, and they still have imposter syndrome. They still doubt themselves sometimes. So that's never going to go away. You can only just work with it and use it as that like fear to push you a little bit farther and a little bit farther.
That is an excellent point, because I think a lot of times we think that people are just like get to this confidence level and then they're never scared. I'm nervous and get sweaty and feel nauseous like before I do anything. Like TikTok videos, podcasts, like it doesn't matter what it is. It's like I still get that, but you get used to the feeling. Yes. Like I know you, and I'm still nervous.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was the kid when I was younger that like, you know, before like a cross country race or like a whatever, I would like puke because I was just so like nervous to just go out and do that thing. And like, you know, over time that's gotten better, and I've dealt with that, and I've learned to kind of use that as like stoking the fire as opposed to like making me, but even at that age, it was kind of like, I'm still going to do this thing because I'm just that stubborn of a person that, luckily for me, I guess, that I was just like, I'm not going to quit. I'm going to do it anyway. But like, here, I'm going to go puke first. So then I started to be like, okay, this is going to happen no matter what. I'm always going to feel this way. So like, how do I turn that into my friend instead of my enemy?
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I have come to, if something is scaring me, like use discernment, not like dangerous stuff. But if something is scaring me, I'm like, oh, it's scaring me for a reason. There's an opportunity for growth. So I can either like do it and grow, or stay like in where I'm at, right? Hold on. One lucky girl said, I don't have a lot of views on my stuff, but I still post and try stuff I like. You guys are amazing. Yeah, and that's the thing too, like you got to figure out what you like talking about. You do that by talking, and it doesn't. If you do content that's not for views, but like for self, and like, oh, I wish somebody had told me this, like in the past, like that's how you get more viewers.
Use that as your discernment. Use that as your inner compass. Is this something I would have liked to hear at the beginning of my journey, or even right now? Like, was it one of those epiphany moments where it's like, holy crap, this might change the way I do this and this and this in my life today. I got to share this with other people so that they can change that too. Then it's coming from that place of true intention, and that always translates. That translates through anything. And then the other thing I want to say about the likes and everything for that person is that I don't get a lot of likes on most of my stuff. Like, I'm just 100% honest. And even like if you look at reels and things like that, sometimes there's like 5,000 views and there's like 4 likes. It's so just don't base the usefulness or the worthiness of what you're posting on, you know, based on those likes or based on those views. Like a lot of people, unless you have that call to action right at the end of every video, like smash that like button, smash that subscribe, like that you hear a lot of people, you know, say. A lot of people forget to. Like a lot of people, like I'm one of them, I'm guilty. Like I'll scroll through videos and I'll like, haha, giggle, or ooh, that was really deep, you know. Maybe I even share it with someone else and I don't hit that little heart because I just forget to. So don't take that as that no one's seeing it or that it's not getting out there. It probably still is. It's just we're living in this weird world where people can be behind their screens and sometimes not make the right decisions there. So yeah. I
love that advice too. Like if you get caught in the algorithm, like the algorithm is like a slippery slope trap. Like it will make you just like go like feel so yucky, you know what I mean? So like you need to take yourself out of that. Do you feel like even though you, like you said, aren't like blasting off on social media, you still get clientele like for your services and still connect with people? Like it doesn't necessarily have to be having like 10 million viewers, right, is divine alignment.
Well, exactly. And I like to think of it like everyone, you know, wants to be that big, you know, star in that sense or whatever. As soon as you get on the socials, we're like, oh, if everyone saw me, then I could be doing this many things per day. Sorry, it was just buffering for a second. But the reality is, like, you don't want to skip that journey. Like, I would not know what to do with myself if all of a sudden, you know, tomorrow every single person who watched my videos was like, I want to work with you. And so I see it as that natural progression. That's the way it's meant to happen. I'm trusting the flow of the universe and how it's bringing this thing to me. It's not a matter of whether or not it's coming. It's coming. It's just that I don't get to control that rhythm. I don't get to control that flow. That's not up to me. So all I can do is kind of relax into it and say, you know, if I don't have any clients this week, that's the way this week is meant to be. And it's really funny. A lot of the times if that happens, then I have so many other things that pop up that I need to do, or I'm busy doing whatever. And I still have a 3D job and I have to do that. And then there's other times where, you know, you send out a couple of those videos of, you know, like those really pure intentions, those messages that we're talking about really hits home. And then all of a sudden you've got a couple people and it's like, wow, this is really happening. But it was happening all along. It's just, you don't get to choose like exactly when these people come in, but they're coming in when they're meant to meet you at your frequency, at your vibration, and when it's going to be the most help for them, exactly what you uniquely can offer. So it's really important to trust that and not, you know, we don't want to force ourselves necessarily on, I want to work with people because they want to work with me at that time. And I want to be able to help them in that session. I don't want to work just because I'm working, you know what I mean? The help is such a huge part of it. So just trust that people will find you when it's time for you guys to meet, when it's time for you to help them.
I love that message in like acclimating. Like you can say, oh, I want like a huge list of clients or like viewers or like interactions, but like it really makes a difference if you have like a slower progression towards that, so it doesn't lead to overwhelm and burnout. Because I have gotten tastes of that where all of a sudden I'm having like a ton more people I'm interacting with and serving, and then all of a sudden I'm burnt out because I didn't acclimate to it. Spirit's like, okay, you want to taste and see what that's like, right? And I'm like, okay, let's put the brakes on a little bit.
Yeah, well, exactly. And it's so important that your energy is where it needs to be for those sessions and for these things as well. Like, that's so important. That's your kind of path of holding that vibration in that space, as well as just your own, you know, mental health and having that work-life balance and, you know, being able to have time for yourself too. So it makes a huge difference. And you don't, you know, like it's like manifesting. Like, we don't, you know, say, okay, tomorrow I want $10 billion. So I don't know what $10 billion feels like. It's like more money, more problems, right? Like, what am I going to do with all this money? So it's like, let's ask for 10,000, and I know what I would do with that, and so on. And it's the same thing with clients or with anything else in life. It's like you want to have that chance to acclimate. You want to have that chance to work through the process, see how it's going to look in your life, and then make the adjustments that you need to go to the next step.
That's beautiful. Do you ever feel like sometimes, okay, so when we get real up in the ethers and like real into source, right, and we're real tapped in, sometimes we let 3D things get a little chaotic and slippery, right? Do you ever feel like your guides sometimes like dial back your etheric gifts so you can get everything in the 3D like, integrated and back together?
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting you bring it up like that, because now I'm going to have to be a lot more mindful the next time things are getting chaotic in 3D life, and be like, okay, do I feel blocked as well? Like when I'm trying to go in and do, you know, meditation or whatever. But I think that's really what happens, is like, it just dials back the amount of connection, the amount of downloads, that kind of thing for a little while, because otherwise we're just so interested and so curious and so wanting to ever expand that knowledge and that understanding that we would just keep going and keep going and keep going down these rabbit holes, and like everything could be like exploding around us. So I feel like it goes hand in hand for sure. It's like they dial that back, and it's like, okay, now you need to, you know, take care of all this stuff around you. Now you need to clean your house. Like, absolutely. That's what it is to me, because like real guide, and I'm just like not a neat freak type person, and so like it'll get really bad, and all of a sudden it's hilarious. It's like I'm, you know, pulling cards, and I get a card that's called like tidy house or something, and I'm like, oh, okay, like we're telling you again, big time. And I look around, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll do that now.
Yeah, and I tell people sometimes, like when they're feeling blocked like that, like stress, like chaos creates stress, and when you're stressed, your evolutionary like system shuts down your extrasensory abilities, because it's like, how do we get out of this stress pocket right now?
Yeah.
And so even like tidying up the house can like make you feel a little bit better, even if it's like 10-15 minutes.
Exactly. And like everything has energy, and our energy wants to be so expansive. So really, like our energy field, everything is filling our whole house as we're in the house. And so we can feel very, you know, viscerally when it's too crowded, whether that's with people or like issues with, you know, family or whatever it is, or if it's, you know, just items. But we can feel all those things cluttering up the energy, and it blocks us. It really does. It's right in the way of that stuff.
It does.
Yeah.
Hey, Jess, we're glad to have you in here too. And Sarah.
Hi.
And Sarah. Hello. So speaking of services, I want to ask you if you could talk a little bit more in depth. I know it's a lot, the things that you offer, but maybe give a synopsis for everybody in case you're interested in getting services with you.
Yeah. Okay. So my services kind of tend to like, this is something that Brittany and I have talked about, and it kind of goes both ways, but they evolve as I evolve, kind of thing. So I've changed services quite a bit, even since just starting to offer them, like, you know, last year or whatever. Currently, what I'm doing is Wake Up to Your Heart, which what I really started with when I was kind of doing my initiation, so to speak, according to my guide, and I did a bunch of sessions for practice. I did 15 sessions for practice to start with people from our group, and which was absolutely beautiful, and I'm so grateful for all their trust. And I got to kind of do an energy journey through each of their energies and allow their guides, their higher self, to show me whatever it was that I needed to see to help them in that moment. And I really went into it with like very little constraints. And it was just like, okay, like I'm going to just be in your energy, like just open yourself up to that. And then I'll let you know what I see, and we'll talk about it and we'll go through it. And so that's kind of evolved from there, where now I'm able to kind of offer like a little bit more structure on them as I go through. So for instance, the Wake Up to Your Heart one is specific to kind of the heart chakra. And I'm really going in with the intention of like, are there things blocking your heart right now? Are there things in your way of that particular energy, that vibration, and bringing that into coherence? And so when I go through that energy journey, it's directed specifically to that energy center and bringing that into coherence. And as we know, an open heart is just, you know, so important and changes so many things in your life. So that's kind of the Wake Up to Your Heart session. And then the Astro-Oracle session is my dabbling into astrology. So I'm not going to call myself an expert by any means.
It's so much. It's so much.
Yeah, it's like there's so much to learn. People go to school for years and years, and so I do not want to take anything away from that or pretend I'm on that same level by any means. But I have an Astro-Oracle deck, that's an Oracle deck, and I basically look at their natal chart, get the information I need from that, pull cards on the questions or the areas that they want to focus on, and then whatever those cards are directing me to look at in their chart, because they would be like, I would see a card that is for abundance, for Jupiter, or I would see a card that's like Aries, and we'd look at, so where's Aries in your chart? What's that trying to tell us in direction of this particular question that you asked? So it's a really, really deep dive. A lot of people and a lot of astrologers, actually, as I'm, you know, reading a little bit more into that, like warn people, like it's a very raw and real thing, because when we look at astrology, we're really looking at like your base programming. Like we're looking at like
your blueprint.
Your blueprint, exactly. And we're going from there and saying, okay, like where can we explore these different areas, and what can we bring to light and talk about? And it's called therapy, because we spend from 2 to 3 hours on a Zoom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Going through kind of like a synopsis of what, you know, I see that's important, or what intuitively I pull that's important about that chart, which covers a good amount of it. And then, of course, those questions, and then anything else that comes up through the session from those questions, and from, you know, whatever, you know, comes to mind. Because, of course, when we're bringing these things to light, we're bringing them to the surface so that we can explore them further, and then hopefully release them, or, you know, bring some relief to those issues as well. Or maybe just some practical ideas of how to deal with them, you know, going forward. So it's super in depth. And then the chakra cleansing is just it's kind of what it sounds like, but we go all the way through the chakras, and I do the same kind of energy journey to look at in each individual energy center what we need to focus on. It's a little bit more compressed than the Wake Up Your Heart for each individual center, because we have, you know, an hour and a half or whatever to go through everything afterwards. So anything can come up though. It's like whatever wants to come to light. It's whatever your energy is showing me. So it can be a past life. It can be a guide. It can be a piece of food. Like it can be anything that's, you know, going to lead us in the direction of that frequency to bring that energy center back into coherence, back into balance as much as we're able to do in that session.
Oh, beautiful. All those sound very in-depth.
Yeah.
Very in-depth sessions.
Yeah, they're in-depth and they're a lot of fun. But yeah, definitely, if you're looking for a more whimsical journey, you know, the Wake Up to Your Heart is a little more whimsical. Chakras get a little more serious, but still very whimsical. Still, we're going through those journeys, very lighthearted. And then the astrology, you kind of have to come in being ready to work. Like, it's like if you go into a therapy session with your therapist, like being ready to be open and chat and, you know, really dive into these things kind of fearlessly. So it does take a little bit of bravery to come into those sessions. But of course, I hold, you know, that space of unconditional love throughout. And so if there's ever anything that people don't want to talk about, we don't force that issue. But a lot of times it just creates a really nice space for them to talk about things they wouldn't necessarily, you know, be ready to talk about.
Beautiful. I have a question about the Astro-Oracle.
Yeah, sure.
So do you feel like if somebody is better with like tangible ways to move forward, right? Because with the astrology portion of it, those are things that they can constantly look up and learn more about, opposed to like whimsy that's kind of like esoteric and like metaphysical and like that type of theoretical, right?
Yes, and thank you for bringing it up. That's a great point. And that's kind of why I brought in that service, because the other ones were so whimsical and were so, you know, like if you like fairies and you like dragons, then that's great, yes. But maybe you don't, you know how to deal with them on a regular basis. And so you want some actual, like, how do I talk to my family? How do I communicate with my partner? And so this one is, yes, very much more practical, more down to earth, more everyday, and going into your future, kind of going in your past and going into your future and what's happened in the 3D world a lot of the time. So it gives a bit more of those tools that you can use on a daily basis.
I love it. I had a Wake Up to Your Heart session with Shannon before you started calling it that.
Yeah.
And you said,
before they gave you the words for it.
And it was absolutely incredible. Like, absolutely incredible. Shannon helped me find past life, and she helped me find my fairy aspect, which opened up to me, like, very much opened up to me, like, the week after with a friend doing Reiki. And Shannon, you, like, opened the door for me to connect and meet with her, like, on a deep level. What I loved about our session, too, is that you showed me all these wonderful, positive, like, rainbow fun, but then you also showed me the shadow. And showed me like, hey, it's okay for us to like love and embrace our shadow. It's a piece of us and it's teaching us something. And so like I was able to like show that shadow side of myself, like unconditional love, as you did, and help like integrate that back in. And so it kind of gave me like a spiritual like bump of like, hey, like 3D sometimes gets a little difficult, right? But you're this like celestial, like whimsical self too, right? There's both sides of the coin.
Well, yeah, and that was so beautiful, and I'm so grateful that you shared the rest of the unfolding of that journey with me, because like that's really what it is you know, as healers in general, like we're not doing the work necessarily, like we're kind of shining the light on these things, and the light and the dark, you know, so we have to do both sides of it. We can't get away with the spiritual bypassing and the only seeing the sunshine and the rainbows. We have to go into the darkness, and that's where we really get those pieces of ourselves, get that ability to step further into our power. I really feel like the darkness and going through that darkness, just like if you're you know, going through something more difficult in life, those are the biggest lessons. Those are the biggest kind of level ups and power ups that we can go through. So I love that you talked with your fairy self, because she was absolutely lovely. She was mad at me for a second, but she was good after that. And no, it was so beautiful. I love that part of what I do. I just
had like a realization. I just put 2 and 2 together that I had a client like a week after you and I had our session together, and a similar thing happened with her. Like we went in and found all these magic pieces of her, and then we went into her shadow side and found a piece of her like you found in me, and I helped her like show unconditional love and integrate and like tell it why it's so important to her. And I'm like, oh, Shannon helped me upgrade in that area too, of like bringing that shadow to the light and like loving it and accepting it and thanking it. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Anytime. I adore working with you. But Yeah, and I think that, I mean, and you gave me so much too from our sessions, and that's just such a beautiful example of how when we have these interactions, like we never, both sides always get something. It's always an exchange, regardless if one person is seeking the other out for a session or not, or if it's just a straight exchange. We always, both of us end up with something, because as we're making that connection, we're taking, you know, we're able to absorb that bit of vibration or that bit of that different thing that the other person brought into us, and then we can, you know, use it in the future. So I adore that. I would definitely work with you anytime.
Oh, thank you. Same. Do you feel that sometimes, like, or all the time, that the people that you're aligned with to help heal, that those are also similar things that you're working through? Or like things that you like are working through or just went through?
Yeah, like a lot of the times it is very much like a mirror. And that's the other way that we never leave the exchange without something, because even if, you know, the other person didn't say 2 words, like you're holding this mirror up to yourself, and you know, what you like, what you're saying is sometimes what you really need to hear as well, even though you're saying it to the other person. So I don't think we ever leave it without gaining something. And that's that's not even just these types of exchanges and readings. That's like a conversation with a new person, or just meeting a new person. Like you always gain something from every new or every interaction that you have with another person. That's the way it's kind of meant to be, beautifully, with consciousness, so that we seek each other out, and so that we find these different perspectives and find where they work for us, or if they don't, just, you know, able to honor them in the other person. But yeah, I mean, I was walking with my dog before this, and kind of I do like a walking meditation type thing a lot of the time, because I find like my monkey brain is busy. I'm like throwing the ball for him, and I'm doing whatever. But what came to me that I really wanted to share with you was as healers, like I kind of had this thought or this download on what we are as healers. And I know that we talked about this a little bit before, but you know, you're very into frequency as well, and understanding that frequencies are kind of what guide us through this healing journey. We're searching for these frequencies. And when we're doing the healing, there can be multiple frequencies within a layer of healing. And so we're having to, you know, peel these back as we go. And then I also think of, this is kind of background info, sorry, but I also like to think of, as I'm going into like a healing session, I think I heard this from someone beautifully on like a podcast or something, and I was like, that is awesome, I'm using that. But it was thinking of people's energy field and their body as a temple. And so when I'm going into, you know, their energy to find whatever I need to find, I'm basically like entering this temple, and it's very sacred, and there's a lot of trust there, like as there would be. And so with that in mind, I was kind of thinking of us as healers, as explorers and archaeologists of frequency.
Yeah. I love that.
You know, yeah. And so I really wanted to share that with you. Like, she'll get it.
Yeah. Indiana Jones of frequency. Yes.
Yeah. And so like, if you think like Indiana Jones and like Tomb Raider and stuff like that, like they're going into the temple. And so like as healers, we have these different tools, right, that we can take in there with us. And so we have our hearts, which are very open. And so we create this open heart space. And what we do when we create that open heart space is create this magnetism, because we are magnetic. Everything is magnetic. And as healers, what we're wanting to do is magnetize to us the frequencies that we want to bring out in the other person to heal. So when we do that really, you know, passively, kind of with the intention of going in and seeing what the best thing is for them in their and highest good in that moment. But really, we're kind of turning on this extra degree of magnetism into their space to bring this out. And so as explorers, that heart space is like our compass. It's magnetic. So it's like leading us through, you know, that thing. Yeah. And then, so we also, of course, like go in with our tool belt. So like, that's everything that we've done so far, all the experiences in our light, our experiences working with other people, and the modalities that we're learning, the wisdom, the extra things that we're, you know, putting into ourselves, so that when those things come to light, we can talk to people about them or learn, you know, things to suggest for them or whatever. So we bring in our tool belt as well. And the other really important thing we bring in is our torch, right? Because we have this light, and we have to bring this torch in and shine this light on these frequencies. And what we do when we shine the light on them, of course, is give them the opportunity to, like, sometimes it is like a monster, almost like it's like our emotion. We're shining light on this emotion. It's almost like a monster that we see it as, because it's causing us dis-ease. But when we shine the light on it, it's like, poof, like, I'm not actually a monster. I'm this little mouse. I'm going to skitter out. And so sometimes it's just as easy as just shining that light on something, having that quick conversation, and then that thing is released and we no longer have that uncomfortability or that mental disease or whatever it is. Other times we find a treasure, right? So we shine a light on something, we have this soul fractal or something that we need to retrieve and bring back for that person and integrate into their life so that they can, you know, be a happier version of themselves, be empowered. A lot of times we find gifts, we find different things like that. They were always in there. It's this person's temple that we're going in and going through. So all of this is theirs. We're just coming in and shining our light on it. And then, of course, we have the things that we see, you know, in our heads, you know, if we see visions or if we have intuitive hits or whatever it is. And that's kind of like the treasure map. And it's not like a treasure map to get from like point A to point B. Like, we don't have the whole route, but we have this vision of what we should be looking for. And so we can go into that temple with that, you know, one thing and kind of look for that, search for that, shine light on that. And then poof, we get another thing and we're like, okay, let's follow that. And this is where the layers are, right? We're going through these chambers. We're like, you know, shining the light on this puzzle. Sometimes it is a puzzle. Sometimes it's like hieroglyphs and we're like, what does this mean? We have to work through it, you know, decode it, and then, you know, shine the light on it and it's gone. And then the layers of healing, of course, the many frequencies. Sometimes we're following this treasure map through the same frequency and following a frequency thread. And other times it's multiple different frequencies. And we're, you know, going wherever it is that we need to go, that the higher self is showing us, and releasing these different frequencies. And then sometimes we hit blocks, or it's the end of the session or whatever it is. There's like this big stone door that's not going to open today. And that's where we've hit the end of that layer that we can deal with in that healing session. And the person needs time to process, and they need time to integrate, and they need time to bring all of that we showed them back into their life and their everyday life before we can go in even further into that temple. And then every once in a while we hit like that inner sanctum, right? Where it's like that base, you know, version of that frequency, that core wounding or that core trauma or whatever. And when we bring light to that, that's when that beautiful blossoming often happens, and those aha moments, and those kind of the reason that everyone kind of goes into these sessions. And I think people underestimate the amount of work sometimes you have to do to get to these, you know, these aha moments. A lot of times it's the work. A lot of times it's a million different chambers and we're done for that day. And it's not necessarily the aha moments, but lots of things to bring back with them, lots of treasures, lots of whatever else. But then when we get to that, you know, inner sanctum, to that's where we kind of make those big changes in people's lives. And so as healers, it's a beautiful blessing, like, to be able to go into these temples, to be able to do this exploring, and to bring so much out of this for people. And then I think the other modalities, like the ones that we just talked about that I offer different things in this, like, exploration. So like for astrology, it might be like a floor plan. Like, it might show me like, okay, this is where childhood trauma is. So I know to go that direction, and I know to kind of get over there. I still don't know what I'm going to find, and I don't know like how it's going to come out or what's going to happen, but I know I'm going to go that direction, shed light on it, and see what comes out and what we can talk about. And then for the emotion code, which is a certification that I'm taking now.
Fun. Okay.
Trapped emotions.
Yeah.
So this is a new thing that I'm doing that I'll be offering very soon. It's like a summoning spell. So it's like, we don't necessarily have to go in and explore whatever. I can stand in one chamber and be like, okay, what do you want me to see? What's the emotion we want to look at right now? That emotion will come forward, and we really don't need much more information on it unless the person wants to share, to shine the light on it, flare a torch over it, and just release it. So there's just all these other ways to kind of work that in. And that's kind of the imagery that came to me. So I really wanted to share that with you.
I'm so happy you shared that. That just gave me so many downloads. I'm sure I'll be integrating that a lot. That was beautiful imagery, like beautiful, beautiful imagery. And I think that it's going to give a lot of people a good grasp on like what healers are doing, going in there and searching for these different frequencies, or what frequencies are, right?
Yeah.
Yes. That was beautiful. I had an envision of you like teaching people like how to read frequencies and what that means, and you wearing like an explorer outfit.
Oh,
you know,
I love
the
it.
khaki
yeah, give me that.
and the hat. It's like a promo. I think that would be super cute.
I totally have to do that now.
Yeah, no, really, because like I'm privy to that, but there's so many things that I just glean from that. And I've been doing it for a while. Like, that would be a beautiful, beautiful thing for you to teach other people. Like, these are frequencies. These are how to read them. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yeah, exactly. And the thing about frequencies is, like, they might lead us to so many different things and be the same matching frequency, but seem completely different. Like, you might hit something in one chamber, just to keep using the metaphor, that, like, was just happened yesterday. You're like, okay, we're going to deal with this. And then the next one, we're dealing with something from a past life. And it seems like it's all over the place. It seems completely random, but it's not random at all. A lot of times we're just magnetizing, compassing to that frequency so that we can clear, you know, more of those. So I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. I love talking frequencies. So definitely do that a lot more.
Yeah. We'll have to chat more about that. I feel like when my Reiki sessions and my Akashic record sessions are starting to like blend and kind of look very similar to one another. I use a lot of the same techniques, but what I found is, how deep am I going into your energy body? Yeah. Like, it's how deep are the frequencies that I'm trying to read? It's like how deep are we going to go in there?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So I've been trying to articulate to people, this is what that is, like the differences, and you have definitely helped me wrap my head around it. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. And yeah, I can totally see you down there with your torch, like going all the way down to the deepest darkest part of the temple in there. Yeah. For sure. Oh my gosh.
Someone said, I just explained this to my friend earlier about how healers tune into different areas of energy to help pull the stagnant out and allow space for new.
Yeah.
allow
space for new.
Allow or allow. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's exactly it. And that's what I mean. That's why I'm very excited about this emotion code healing, because of the simplicity of it. Because I do all this very, like we talk, you know, esoteric out there, journeys and whatever. This is the opposite end of that. Like, this gives us the ability to make that space, to pull that out. And even the way that in the certification that they describe an emotion is like, it's kind of like the shape of a fist, or not the shape of a fist, but the size of a fist in your body somewhere. And if you think of your energy body as constantly moving and everything, which it is, like your energy is constantly flowing through you. And all of a sudden there's this stuck emotion that's right in the middle of it. It's blocking things. And of course that's going to result in like physical disease, mental disease, all kinds of things. And so when we release it, it actually becomes bigger. So it actually comes out, becomes, you know, much bigger like that, and then dissipates. Because really it just wants to be seen for what it is. And at the time that we had it, for whatever reason, whether we were like in class and we were frustrated and it just wasn't the right time to throw a temper tantrum, or like whatever it was, our body was like trying to help us. It's like, okay, don't worry. You've got this emotion. You can't deal with it right now. I'll put it here. We can deal with it later. But then a lot of times we don't deal with it. And so we get full, like we get really full of these emotions, and it starts causing really, really bad issues. And that's why something as simple as even knowing what the emotion is, or sometimes I have to find, you know, the age it was trapped, or even like rare, sometimes like what caused it, but very rare that we have to go that far into it. We usually need very little information. Even that much brings it to light, gives it the attention that it wanted. We sit with it for a moment, and then we release it with our magnetic field. And so it creates that space, and it creates that space for your energy to flow through you again.
That's beautiful. I think there's just something out in the collective right now, because I have created a whole new modality of releasing past versions from energetic timestamps.
I'm so interested in that.
Yeah. So when you experience, it's exactly what you're talking about. You experience trauma or, you know, difficult memories, and you had to bypass your emotions to survive, or maybe you didn't have the toolkit to do that, right? Or weren't taught how. Right? They are projecting behavioral patterns and triggers into your present now. That's why we're like, why do we act like that? And we're not, right? Yeah,
and that's what it is. It's like that frequency is a cycle, right? It's like a karmic cycle, or a cycle repeating itself. And so you're going to hit these things that trigger it in different ways. And if you do not deal with it in that time, that's probably going to internalize, and then it's going to come out again. And so then you're going to work back through those layers of frequency and layers of that cycle of frequency. That's kind of how I see it. I don't know if you see it similarly with the frequency. That it's kind of like a cycle. And so when you're going way back there, you're like traveling back in time along this cycle and getting to that core, that inner sanctum of what it is, so that you can release it in that past life. And then it's going to have that ripple effect through the rest of the cycle.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And like you're saying, like it's a cycle, karmic cycle too, because I found that when I help somebody release this version energetic timestamp, now we can go back in and find when that happened in a past life.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
it starts
now you've got
opening up
the
as a rollover
device on the frequency. Like you've got
Yep.
the, you know, the energetic signature of that frequency.
It's like pulling cords.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jess said, yes, Brittany, this has been for what's happening for me very much an open filing cabinet of what do you want to continue to react to this trigger in this way? Yeah. Or do you want to continue to react to this trigger in this way? Yeah. Yeah. It's like going back to the root. Like you had like your present consciousness. And that's what I tell people too. Like your past versions are not at the consciousness level that you are at right now. So like you and me understand soul contracts. Mm-hmm. And like, oh, this happened for a specific reason.
Yeah.
You know, tell me about my journey. 12-year-old me didn't know that.
Yeah, no, exactly. Didn't know. Didn't have an understanding of it. So how could you possibly process it? And that's part of that, bringing it to the light, is you have these new perspectives, these new lenses through which to view this thing now. And so it can be filed away in a place that's healthy as opposed to a place of trauma or a trigger or whatever. You're removing the energetic charge from it in a way. So it's more neutral. It stays with you. You still have that memory, but now it's not going to trigger you anymore. And then the other thing that to what Jess just said is, like, a lot of times I find when after you heal things and you've released these emotions, at least with these practice sessions I'm doing, you'll get a test right afterwards. So it's I just released it, and it's like, oh, now it's going to test me right away, like literally the next day, and see if I'm going to react to this still. And it's like, wait, nope, I'm not going to, because I've learned this now. But yeah, it has there's such an interesting way the universe has of not only, you know, putting us through the lessons, but also the testing at the end of it to make sure we're done with it.
Absolutely. And something that I've been doing with people is when we go in to release that, I build anchor points in their consciousness for a location meeting. So maybe that's an ice skating rink, a tropical forest, a fairy garden. And so when you start to feel triggered and like the universe is giving you that test, you can take a breath, take a pause, because we split off those two consciousness, right? There's you, higher self, and then there's past version, but she's still there. And we can go in and have like a very quick conversation and say like, hey, I feel you trying to take over the wheel of consciousness. Let me come in there real quick and figure out what's going on and explain like why we're not going to make this choice and decision again.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And
just say thank you.
That works on a future basis as well. So sometimes when you get that voice from your higher self, that's probably exactly what you just described. Future time frame into your current time frame, coming back and giving yourself that warning.
Oh yeah, I never even thought about that too. Yeah, like there's higher self me coming in to like tell me the same things I'm telling past versions now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, absolutely. I never thought about that. Like, you know, I got a download too that I create like transformational healing programs for people. They're like 6 or 7 weeks working together. And my higher self, like 2 days ago, said, I want you to build one for you right now and work on 6 or 7 weeks with yourself. And I was like, oh, I never thought about like building my own
right?
like
we
program for self.
I think that's such a funny thing. It's like we get into like a new thing, and we're so like focused on helping others that we forget we can use this same modality for ourselves, and like we have to keep doing the layers for ourselves too to keep up with what we're able to offer to others. And so yeah, exactly. You'll be able to do that for yourself and create that spot. And I love, because that's what you do as well, right? I mean, we saw a lot of that in your session, was like creating these spaces, creating space for people, but like specific spaces. And I love that you literally brought that right into your modality. It's so beautiful.
Yes, just love the idea of meeting space. Yeah, and sometimes your past version will say like, hey, I want to be called a different name. They have a whole different personality. Right. Like whole different persona, right? So it's easy to decipher like what is my thoughts and what is their thoughts? What are my triggers? What are their triggers?
Yeah, so true. And such a good point that if you're really feeling like this isn't me, like why am I acting like this towards this? I don't do that anymore. It's a really good moment to be mindful and be like, okay, wait, is this a past version of me trying to sneak back up, or is this
Absolutely. So question about the lantern, okay, and holding the light for people. Okay, so I was going to ask you, why did you decide to become a healer? And when I say that, I mean like decide to go with something that you've already done for millennia, probably, right? Like past life after past life after past life. But it's a choice whether you want to help people or not in each lifetime, right? Be the healer. And so
true.
I have found that we can only go in with people as deeply we've gone in ourselves, right?
Yes.
And so do you find that like you are holding the lantern for people that you've been in those spaces, like those specific, you know, experiences and those like energetic throws, emotions, and you're like, hey, I've been there.
Yeah.
Let me show you the way out with my lantern.
Yeah, I think I definitely identify with kind of like the wounded healer, you know, archetype for sure, of going through some things in this life, being at really low spots in my life, you know, in a relationship with a twin flame that was really quite like mentally, verbally abusive. There was, you know, infidelity. There was all kinds of stuff. That was a really low point. I struggled with alcohol. Like I say, I'm not an alcoholic now, but I was an alcoholic then. And so I'm, you know, going on like 2 years sober from that. And so there's kind of these, thank you. I honestly forget about it a lot. I'm not even sure what the actual time frame is anymore. You get past a certain point and you're like, you know, doesn't really come up anymore, thank goodness. But it definitely gave me this kind of insight into those vibrations, the lower vibrations, the density. What does the density feel like? And so even if I haven't gone through specifically what that person's gone through, I understand like the core wounding behind it. I understand like the density behind it. And so I'm able to kind of shine a light with that space held, with that love held.
Beautiful. Like I felt this frequency before. I know what this frequency feels like.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I think like, just decided it wasn't, it didn't really feel like deciding to be a healer. It was when when I started to get into flow, when I started to kind of give up a lot of the programming, or try and get rid of a lot of the programming that I had held for a long time that really didn't do me very well, with the knowledge that there was more out there, and I always felt like there was something bigger than me, that higher power. I guess I was kind of agnostic for a while, because I said atheist, but I definitely always believed that there was a higher power, so not really atheist. So I went all the way that way and then came all the way back. And so as I started to sink more into that faith, I guess, and find faith in general that I didn't really have before, the flow kind of led me into it. It was like, you know, if I got a reading, it was like, this is you, this is what you're supposed to do. If I look at my astrology, it's like, this is you, this is what you're supposed to do. And so I understand as well that it's always my choice. And I wouldn't have to do this if I didn't want to. But the reality is that when it's something you're supposed to do and it feels like your purpose, well, that's like the best feeling in the world, when you get to do that more often in your life. And so it lights me up. Like after a session, like with someone, even if it's like a 3-hour session, I'm like vibrating, because I'm, you know, so plugged in, so just in the moment, and so happy to have been able to be some sort of you know, change, a catalyst for change for them in any small way. So it's like it found me a little bit more than I found it, I think.
I love that. Instead of like deciding, it's more remembering.
Yeah.
Like remembering, oh, this is me at like a core soul level. I've done this before, and I can
It's like, oh yeah, like, you know, and like you say, you know, done this a bunch of times. Like a lot of things feel like that. And if I don't feel that way, sometimes, you know, sometimes it's a clear cut, like, nope, this isn't the thing, and it's very obvious. But other times, if I'm super, super curious in it, I can kind of feel like, okay, I haven't done this before, but maybe I'm supposed to in this life. Maybe I'm supposed to add this astrology modality into the healing and see where that leads me. Because I do feel like in the past, I was much more of kind of the esoteric, you know, far to that direction type of healer, and maybe not necessarily quite so practical. So I feel like it's also just allowing you to expand on that from those past lives, based on, you know, what feels good, what doesn't feel good, and where does your curiosity lie.
Do you feel like some of like your gifts and talents like may not be your main focus in this lifetime, but you're having like rollover gifts from like other past lives, and you're able to like utilize those like a Rolodex?
Yeah. It's so interesting with gifts, because I'm definitely feeling, it's funny to use Rolodex, because I was kind of the rollover, like that is a really good way of describing just that rolling motion. For me, feels really good to describe this, because it's very much like that ever evolving kind of, you know, where is it going to go? And I try not to get too tied up in, as you can see by my ever changing, you know, offerings, too tied up in one gift, or this is my gift, or this is my gift. And I tell people this in the sessions too, because as you evolve, as you grow, you're meant to uncover new gifts. You're meant to explore new gifts, and that's going to keep you you interested and invested and wanting to help other people, and just growing within yourself. So I think that there's definitely ones that come in from other lives too, but I think this life for me, it feels like maybe it's my last incarnation or something, but it's definitely one to explore the things that I'm interested in. It's definitely to not put any sort of constraints, not put the constraints on it, and just see where it goes, and like not put that judgment on it, and not say, okay, I'm a healer today, so I'm definitely going to be a healer in 10 years. Maybe I won't, you know, it doesn't feel like that right now, but I want to be as open to that as possible, as open to, you know, whatever wants to come in.
So maybe one of your karmic like lesson cycles for this one is go with the flow. And you're like, I'm gonna, that's when I'm gonna learn and really get into this one.
Yeah, because I'm very much like, that's been a big lesson for me, is like letting go of control, letting go of perfectionism, you know, inherent self-worth, all those ones that are kind of tied together in the going with the flow thing. Because if you're constantly caught up in the rat race and like, I need to do this well to be a person, to be accepted, to be whatever, then you're not playing your game, you're playing the other game, you're playing whatever they want you to play. So finding that flow and that release, that surrender and that release from control is definitely like a huge karmic cycle for me, for sure. And I struggle with it sometimes. It's like, it's not, you know, certainly not like hacked. I think it's, for me, it's like the very big karmic cycles that we go through are meant to be layers, and they're meant to be layers forever. Like, I don't know if we ever fully, until like we're done kind of here, fully hack those very primal, you know, karmic cycles. I think we're meant to keep uncovering those layers as we go, and continue to unravel it.
So I tell people, healing is a journey. Like, just when you think that you, like, you're done with this lesson, it comes to like at a deeper level. Yes. So it's just a journey. It's a marathon, not a race, right?
Exactly.
I have been in masculine energy for like the majority of my life. Like, I've like up until like 27, 28 years old. And now I'm just starting to get into like divine feminine, like flow. And it is a lot different. It's wildly, wildly different. And they're both beautiful. They're both needed. But it's a lot different.
Yeah, for sure. And I resonate with that deeply. Like, it's definitely the masculine, definitely the, if I don't do this, no one will do it. Or if I, you know, if I want it done right, I have to do it. Like, very much like that masculine energy. And it's just been kind of finding the spirituality and finding that flow that's bringing me finally back to more of a balance with the divine feminine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that a plant in your background right there?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like an umbrella plant.
It's a what?
I think it's called umbrella plant or umbrella.
Oh, cute. Okay.
From the shape of the leaves. You know, it's really funny because I shouldn't even ever try and name plants because I don't know the names of like most of my plants. So I'll be like, look at this plant I have, and someone will be like, oh yeah, what kind? I'll be like, I have no idea.
I don't know.
They're pretty. I like that.
I don't know if you bumped it or it's moving, or maybe it's the air conditioner, but I think it's telling us, hey, let's talk about plant medicine.
Oh yeah.
That was going to be one of our topics, and that goes right inside with like healing, and also even like picking up on frequencies. Like, we can talk about that too, like how that's helped us.
Yeah, for sure.
So whatever you're comfortable sharing with, obviously, but what has been some of your, or what do you think about plant medicine, like plant healing?
Oh, I think it's so it's beginning to be more studied and utilized, and it's so underutilized so far. But especially my main adventures have been with psilocybin, so magic mushrooms, and only in the last year. Like, before that, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified, and rightly so, because, you know, part of what they tell you when you're going to be imbibing magic mushrooms is be aware of your set and your setting. And so you want to have a place that you feel comfortable. Probably if you're going to do like a spiritual adventure, not any more people around, no dogs that need you, no pets that need you, whatever. But then your set is what's in your head. It's how you're feeling. It's your, you know, your mindset. Right. And so for a long time, when I was going through that density, that darker stuff, my mind was not a place that I wanted to be. And there's no holds barred here. Like, there's like, mushrooms are going to show you who you are at the deepest level, the deepest, darkest level. And so if you are in any way afraid of who you might be under there, that's going to make it, it might be a little bit of a rough trip the first time. And then you might, you know, be a little bit more open to seeing those shadows, to seeing, you know, that reality of kind of your energy, and then it'll get easier. But for a long time, I don't know what would have happened if I would have actually taken it at that time. It wouldn't have been a fun time. It probably would have been a horrible trip, and I probably never would have gone back to them because I would have been so terrified. So I know that was really, even in the times when I was very disconnected, that was like my higher self being like, okay, this is not the time for you to do this very sacred thing. Like, this isn't like weed, and this isn't like, you know, alcohol. You can't just party and do as much of this as you want. This is a serious, sacred thing. And I do view it as very serious, very sacred, very spiritual. I know you can take smaller amounts and do it in a social setting, but it's really not for me. I will become completely immobile. My body just wants to go inside. It wants to do the thing. It's there for learning and for teaching. And I think of, like, if we're thinking of our same metaphor of being the healers as the explorers, mushrooms become your teacher and your explorer that you are letting into your temple when you are choosing to bring that in. And so you can go in with an intention. You can go in, you know, saying, I'd like to learn more about my guides, or I'd like to learn more about this aspect of myself, you know. But really, when it comes down to it, it's going to show you what you need to see. It's kind of like when we're going in as healers, whatever the subconscious or the higher self wants to show us is what's going to be seen. And so that's the same thing with mushrooms. It's going to show you what you need to see in that moment, the lesson that you need to learn. And if you struggle against that, if you fight against that, if you think this isn't where I wanted to go, like, no, that's going to be a bad trip. Then you're going to be fighting against the magic, against the medicine. When really the sooner that you can surrender to that, it's going to be uncomfortable for a second because it's not the normal way, that you're not used to your mind showing you these things so, you know, vividly, so that you can learn. Yeah. Yep. Sometimes right in front of your face, sometimes visually, you know, outside, but, you know, a lot of times in your head. But I mean, it's gonna, you know, it's gonna show you that thing. So the best thing you can do is, like, sit back, relax, be in a nice quiet space, a nice comfortable space, some blankets, because you'll probably get really cold at one stage, and then take the blankets off because you get really hot after that if you're like me. But just let yourself flow in it. That's the best advice I can give to anyone who kind of wants to get into it, is don't fear it, but respect it. Go in respecting it, go in with an intention, and the intention to allow the mushroom spirit to show you whatever it is that you need to see, and go with it. Just whatever that is, even if it's uncomfortable, let it happen. The sooner you let it happen and let those floodgates open and you know, go along with the lesson, it's going to be bliss. Like, it really is. It's a release. Sometimes you're bawling your eyes out crying, but it's still such a beautiful feeling, such a blissful, connected feeling. Like, it just like mycelium connects everything below, you know, the forest floor. Mushrooms, when you take them, connect you to everything else that is, all the energy that is. And so there's no better feeling of connectedness I've ever experienced. The oneness, the spirituality, just the primal knowing and understanding that there is so much more, and that we are all one, and that we are all connected. That knowingness, as opposed to faith, came from mushrooms.
Have you ever seen the documentary Fantastic Fungi on Netflix? Yeah. Okay, yes. When you started talking about the mycelium, I was like, oh, I wonder if she's seen that one.
Yes,
I highly recommend that to anybody, just to learn about, like, outside of, like, psilocybin, but just mushrooms in general, and how they have their own consciousness and how they interconnect everything, and the cinematography. Yes. It is incredible.
Yeah, and how they talk about, you know, the energy and the messages that they send through that mycelium, just like to different trees. Like, a tree can warn another tree through the mycelium, through the connections, the energy that it sends, that, oh, like, there's someone cutting down trees over here. Like, that tree will feel that fear, and pass that message along to other trees, to other animals, to other, everything is connected in the forest. So it's, I don't know, I'm obsessed with it. And I love that. There's, like, not even just magic mushrooms, like, just mushrooms in general are so good for you. Like, there's some place, like, a lot of places are starting to finally offer that as supplements or whatever. But I take mushroom supplements every day. And that, you know, there's vitamin C, there's all kinds of vitamins. It's just, it's good stuff. It is a little bit expensive still, but hopefully as that becomes more, you know, widespread, there's more options for people, because I would take, you know, a lineup of different mushroom extracts every day over normal vitamins, you know, trusting what's in them.
I thought it was so interesting in the documentary too, where it was talking about, you were saying if one of them is in stress, like, there'll be a parent tree, and it, you know, it maybe is getting cut down or like it's experiencing a lot of stress, it will take all of its nutrients and send it through the roots to its offspring trees.
Yes.
And
exactly.
I was like, that is so, that just like, that shows it really is like its own consciousness form. Like it has, you know, feelings, like emotions, trying to say
actual
children,
emotions,
right?
things too, which people don't think about when it comes to vegetation. And it kind of puts us in a bad spot, even as like vegans or something. You're like, no, what do I eat now? At least it's good for me. But you know, it's all the way life works. But it's so funny to think, you know, it's amazing to think that, you know, they have their own feelings, their own emotions, they have, you know, families and that sense of community to spread those nutrients, to spread that energy, whatever it is. Like it's astounding.
Jess said, and also the opposite, the trees can tell other trees and animals when someone with a vibration of connecting is present. Absolutely. Yeah. I tell people all the time, if you are trying to connect with nature and Mother Gaia, right, and help the planet and like move into like this unity consciousness, it loves you being out there with them.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like it's a beautiful energy healing cycle.
Yes. Well, and that's a great point. And that's why if you are going to take mushrooms and you can make a safe place, like a campsite or whatever it is where you have the opportunity to lay down, but you can also be out in the wilderness while you're doing that, like it becomes like a palace. It becomes like this, again, like a temple that you are within in nature, and it welcomes you, and it's a beautiful vibration that it creates. And with that intention, like you're very welcome there, and very welcome to the many messages and the many like downloads and things that they would like to offer us, would like us to understand better.
Jess said, I saw something about plants and the importance of saying thank you and I love you because they know that they are giving their energy to us in a way that is beneficial for us. Then we die and give our nutrients back to the earth. Yes, beautiful, beautiful healing cycle. And so I actually had a journey with psilocybin months ago. I talked to Jess the same day, but I went out into Mother Nature, Mother Gaia, and I was connecting with my cards, and I could hear her speaking to me. And we made a energy like healing contract with one another. And I said, I will do everything in my power and ability to help where I can. And that includes with people too. And after that happens, like I can hear plants and animals speaking.
So beautiful.
Right? Like the frequencies. And it's not verbal. It's just like an internal feeling, an internal knowing.
Yeah.
The other day I was looking at my phone and there was just this really tragic thing happening with all these birds and these dolphins. And I said, you know what can I do to help in this scenario? And a ladybug landed on my phone. Like as I was thinking that, and I was like, this ladybug is trying to, that's like a good luck prospers. It's like, yeah, we want you to help us.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, how can you help us? Yes.
Yes. They want to work together. Everything, all energies, in the universe really want to work together with us. People are the only ones who have decided that, like it's more advantageous for us individually to work separately in many ways. And so it's like, it's the natural way of things. It's the natural way that things should be, that we all help each other and work with each other, the yin and the yang, and just like, complement each other in what we're able to do. And so very much so, I love that you had that experience. I had a dragonfly one time, actually. I was floating in my pool and had a couple mushrooms, I think, before that. I wasn't on a crazy trip or anything, because wouldn't recommend necessarily going in a pool. But that day it was safe. And I had this dragonfly, and I was just kind of like, musing and kind of just connecting and just in my head, just, talking to nature, talking to the universe. And this dragonfly just kept, like, every time I'd have a thought, he'd like buzz over my head and then go. And I'm like, okay, eventually he's going to just leave. But he was there the whole time I was outside. And when I went inside, and he left too. And they 100% feel when there's someone there that wants to connect and crave that, much like we crave interaction.
Absolutely, yeah. I had that download while on Grooving Goddess, that insects and animals have gone through their own ascension process and wish to speak with us and connect with them. Yeah, absolutely. Like they feel your energy, they feel your vibe. They want to, have you as a friend, just like you would with a human friend, right? So I would like to say, like, cautioning people with psilocybin too, like, it's very important who you're doing that around too. Yes. Because you're opening up your energy body very wide and your soul. Yeah. Yeah. And go ahead.
And that's such a good point. And just for your comfort level in general, like the first time that I ever did a larger trip, it was like taking away all of those attachments, peeling that away, because that's that ego. It's the layers of the ego that it peels back. And so our attachment to all these material things and even other people is very much our ego attaching us to that, telling us we need that. Our natural way of being is just connected with everything, and we know that, so we don't have to have that attachment. And so if you have other people around, not only are you opening yourself very much up to them, you're almost putting like an expectation on yourself to interact with them, to have that attachment. And the way that you really get the most out of the experience is by allowing yourself to dive inward
internally.
You can. Yeah.
Yep.
So it can be not only kind of a little dangerous as far as your energy body goes and everything, as far as like, I don't want to say dangerous, but you know, like you're opening yourself up to that, but also just really uncomfortable if you haven't done it before and you're doing it for the first time, and there's, you know, people around that might expect answers from you or attention. You don't want to have to do anything outside of yourself. You want to be able to focus all that energy going in.
Yep. I was going to say, I was using psilocybin in not the most respectful way when I first started, like using it to like hang out with friends and go to festivals and like all of these things. And I had beautiful, magical experiences. Yeah. But for the most part, my higher self was a little tricky. I had a really, really, it was like a dual trip the first time. It was really great experiences, but then it like really took me to some like shadowy, deep aspects of myself, right?
Right. Yeah.
And even with that happening, I was like, oh, I really like this. Like, even though I didn't know why,
yeah.
Right? Even going through those darker periods, like people say like, oh, you have a bad trip. It's never a bad trip. It's just like, how shadow aspect are we going in there?
Yeah. And
right?
How open are you to seeing that? Like,
yeah. And I was not open. So I kept on having experiences with it where it was very shadowy. And I said, my experience must be different from everybody else's. But what I realized along the way is I didn't know I was an empath. I didn't know I was a light worker. I didn't know that I could read frequencies and energies. So when I was opening my body up and, like you said, intermingling with other people, like it was changing my wavelengths and frequencies.
Right. Yeah.
And now, yeah, and now I much more prefer like doing it either by myself or with one person with me, right? Because it's an internal thing. It's a teacher. Yeah. And I still have ones that are like fun and whimsy and magic and unicorns, and then you'll do some and it's like, oh, I'm going to take you out of your body and show you all of the areas in which you can improve.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And so you have to be ready for both those things. It's not a bad thing to be around people as long as you are also comfortable being like, okay, now is the time when they're telling me I got to go be alone and just be alone for an hour and do this teaching part and then come back out and hang out with people. So as long as you're like kind of just aware that you might need to move around a little bit and give yourself that time if you need it, then for sure, like it can be relatively social as well. People like to listen to music or they like to watch things that are like very vivid colors or whatever with the visuals. If you're doing like a smaller amount, you know, you maybe don't get to that completely shut off inner experience. But yeah, as long as you kind of like are open to kind of moving around and finding a new setting if you need it, why not? You know, you can still enjoy it with other people. It's just know. I think it helps to know. I think it helps to know what the purpose of the mushrooms really is and what it's trying to do. And so then you know like where you can cooperate with it or when when you should be using it. That makes the most sense.
I like we were talking about, it's the consciousness bringing those frequencies to the forefront.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it can bring your fun and magic and whimsy frequencies and show you all of that. But at the same time, it's also going to show you these shadow frequencies so you can work on those. And like I'm saying, and I'm not saying not to, do it with other people. But when I did my first trip, nobody explained to me anything.
Right.
And it was a wild ride. And so I think conversations like this are like so beneficial to like give people a heads up of like, these are the things that you will be experiencing.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think like I've learned some of my biggest lessons that I've kind of shared a little bit on Instagram and stuff from this. I mean, the first time I ever did it was like the most intense visuals where I was just watching like coded light language just floating around everywhere in the most vibrant colors I've ever seen, sobbing just from the beauty of it. And then, just answering questions like I was tapped right into the matrix, and like my husband was asking me like, what about this? What about the meaning of life? And all this stuff. And I was just like, just writing off these answers, just like straight out. And then he asked me, well, you know, if this is all a game and this is all an illusion, why don't we just stop it if we're not having fun? And my brain broke for a second. That's where, like, I was having a great trip, all of a sudden bad trip, because it was like Pandora's box opened. It was like,
yeah, then you're asking yourself, like, why am I here? What is my purpose? What am I
like, exactly, and you're in a different mental state, which is the thing to understand. So in, like, you know, complete waking state, you'd be like, that's okay, like, I'll be fine. But in that moment, I was like, holy crap, I'm going to be crazy now, and I won't be able to live life because I'm going to be a crazy person now that I know this stuff. And so I was like, no, like, I'm sorry, I went too far, like, close the box, and like, you can't close the box. But eventually, like, they let me stress out for, you know, maybe like half an hour of like, oh my God. And then it was like, no, you're fine. You're going to be fine. It was like a switch in the moment. Just like I hadn't done anything really differently other than said, I think it's going to be okay. Like, just, again, like, leaned into it, surrendered to it. And they're like, that was the lesson. You don't want to ask too many questions. You don't want to ask too much too soon. Like, there's things that you aren't, your little brain, your little human brain is not able to know all at once. You can't understand it all at once. It would break your brain. So don't ask all those questions. It was like, you're going too far the first time. Like, you're really going into the deep here, and you've done this once. Like, it was like, back up. And so I learned that lesson. They taught me that lesson the first time. That was a beautiful lesson, and I'm appreciative of that because I've approached everyone afterwards with more respect and more reverence. There was another time where they showed me about letting things flow. So all energy that's coming to you, being just a messenger, just being a messenger knocking on your door. And if you ignore that messenger, then it's going to keep knocking and ringing the doorbell, ring whatever, and get really upsetting. But if you just go to the door and be like, hi, I don't want to do this right now, but thanks for coming. I appreciate you. I see that you're here. Off you flow, kind of thing. And that was the words they gave me, off you flow. Then that energy is going to keep going. And like the mountain, like where the river, you know, is not going to go through it, it's going to go around it. These energies will just flow around you, and they'll find their place in your energetic space. And that's just that moment of kind of being mindful, sitting with these feelings, and instead of fighting them, instead of trying not to feel anger or not to feel it, feeling it through, having it for a moment, and then being like, I shine the light on it. It's not going to get stuck. It's going on. And they showed me that in such a beautiful way. And that was the trip that I managed to record. So there's a lot of crying, and there's a lot of other stuff. There's part of it where,
ebbs and flows.
I had my one hand. I realized that my one hand, my masculine side, my right side, was holding and nurturing my feminine side, my left side, and had it held like this to my heart. And it was very much the two sides of me doing what they needed to do. This one was like, okay, I'm the protector. And this one was like, okay, I need nurturing right now. I'm a little softer right now. And so that was like getting through a little bit of the rough patches as well. So even the rough patches in there are teaching you these beautiful things and these beautiful different aspects of yourself. And the most recent one that's super profound was when my Nana died recently, and I just had a lot of things seemingly happening at once. And you know, when you have grief, a lot of things can just feel very overwhelming very quickly. So it just felt like I was full. It felt like I had no space anymore. And I was just full of whatever, and I couldn't figure out I couldn't cry. Like, I wasn't crying. I wasn't releasing it on my own. So I took the mushrooms with the intention of releasing, knowing it might be a hellish ride, because I was like, if I want to really, like, this is a lot of shadow right now. This is grief I am sitting in, and I'm going to dive further into it. It's like, instead of, you know, sitting here at the pool and like being really uncomfortable for the next how many months, I'm going to dive right in that pool.
Yeah. Like, let's get it up. To get it out.
Exactly. Just get it up. And so it got really, really, really dense. It got really dense, and it was a point where I felt, again, kind of like I was going crazy. Voices coming from every direction, people I knew, people I didn't know, things I would want to hear, things I wouldn't want to hear, just like, you know, very almost like schizophrenic-y, kind of like just all these things coming at me. And I was like, at the moment when I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore, like, oh my God, like, this is too much. It's like, with healing, I see this too as kind of like just a visual. It gets really, really dense. It gets as dense as it can possibly get, much like a star, and it's dense, and then it explodes.
Yep.
And so the density kept going on until I hit that point, and then exploded out, and the energy, then I could see it all around me. I could see what my energy was, and I could say, there's that energy, and there's that, you know, emotion, and it was huge. And I released at the same time. I started crying, and I was angry. was actually kind of the underlying thing. I was angry that I had made myself so small for so long, that I had pushed all my energy into such a small space by, you know, going to the grocery store and someone else pushes in my way and I say, oh, I'm so sorry. And like, I'm making myself small in all these ways. I'm not, you know, coming out and saying something when I know I have something good to say because I don't want to like interrupt someone else. And I'm, you know, like all these little things that we do from day to day that are just tiny things, but they're making ourselves much smaller than we are. And not acknowledging like the true size of ourselves, the true expansiveness that we are. And so it was showing me in this beautiful, very visual way that we are like bigger than the planet. Like our energy fields, each one of us wants to be bigger than Earth. It wants to take up the whole thing and be part of Earth at the same time, right? Because all is one. So we are part of that energy field, but also just to allow all of those things that we experience to flow the way that they should. It needs to be that big. And so that's kind of like where I was like, you know what, I need to take up more space. I need to learn to take up more space and more space in tune with what my energy field requires in order to kind of let that energy flow freely. So that was a really nice one as well. But it was not without, you know, difficulty. It was not like, you know, it was tough.
I feel like psilocybin will pull you out of your life and kind of higher self over everything that's going on and show you from a different perspective outside of yourself, because it helps with your neural networking and putting like different pieces together. I've had times in my life where it's like I literally don't know what to do to move forward, and I've worked with psilocybin to help me get that outsider like perspective, right? One of the trips that is similar to one you had is I have had anxiety for like a long time, right? I am much more healed about it now. But I would just overplay like, what if this happens? You know, all of those things.
The overthinking. Yeah, for sure.
And so my guides on my trip said, we want you to sit here in the silence and go through every single scenario that you're scared of and play it all the way through. Like just face that like head on. It was so intense and scary, right? But like you said, it kept compressing and compressing and compressing. And then once I felt what those feelings would feel like if those things were to happen, it's not so scary. Because it's like, oh, I know what that feels like, so I know how to handle it.
And like at the very end of it, like the trust, and it holds you in that place where you know everything is connected intrinsically, so you know no matter what, you will be okay. Like, even if you lost, I mean, like, knock on wood, whatever, like, if we lost every single thing we love, everything, whatever, we would be okay. If we died, we would be okay, because we move on as energy, and this is not finite. Death is just a transition. And so at the very worst thing that could happen, even if it wouldn't look like what we would hope, you know, the rest of this life would look like, we would be okay, and we would survive, and we would get through it. That's a beautiful
It took me through every single scenario. My son, my friends, my family, me, you know, but like you said, at the end of it though, I was like, I'm an energy being body, and I can reincarnate with these people again. Like I have had soul contracts, like it's okay, you know, and that gave me like a big sense of relief and like freedom from fear.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. It does. And that's like, and it's facing our fears, right? And that's the ultimate way really to do it, because they're gonna, like, mushrooms are going to show you much more viscerally and much more vividly what that would look like, what that would feel like than if you're just sitting there trying to do that on your own. And so as painful as I'm sure that process was, it was that much more helpful. And I love that you talked about the rewiring, like the forming new neural pathways, because that is just one of the biggest part of mushrooms. And I've done microdosing as well for that purpose. And it's been just completely intrinsic to my own healing from the PTSD of that relationship I mentioned, and of, you know, the traumas and things that I've gone through. I wouldn't recommend people just microdose and don't do other work on themselves. Like, you want to be doing journaling, or you want to be doing meditation, or you want to be in a program, or, you know, a self-love, you know, something that you're doing that's changing your perspective on yourself, on the world, on the way that you think. Because it's not going to just automatically switch up pathways. But if you're doing the right things and you're doing those baby steps to put things into motion, microdosing will help your brain to just make those new neural pathways, reconnect things, take you out of that trauma loop, and open up a new loop that you can go and process things differently. It's kind of like, kind of like EMDR in a sense, not the same process, but the same idea of taking you out of that trauma loop, opening up a new pathway, and allowing your brain to process your new experiences and even your old experiences, if you bring them up, through a new lens. And so and the more that you do that, the more that you break in those pathways, the more those pathways become the ones that you're using on a regular basis, as opposed to the other ones. And so you're becoming more of a positive, optimistic, you know, looking forward to the good and all that can happen kind of person. Yeah.
I love that. I also had a similar experience recently with talking to my past version that has been making herself small.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like that happened last night on the portal. When I was doing a meditation. Yeah, she came up and I was like, oh, you're still in here. Like, we need to go through that healing. Like, I'm healed now. Like, I'm taking up way more space, but you're still caught in that, like, time stamp. Like, we need to come in and, like, put a crown on you and pull your chin up and like tell you like you're honored and you're glorious and you know, like all of those things. Like I needed to go back in and honor her and lift her up.
That's
right?
beautiful.
Like,
and that makes me want to do that same thing in meditation, because I always recommend the going back and the forgiving of those past versions of yourself, because whether or not it was something that was your fault, a lot of times we just haven't forgiven that person for just being a person that was caught in that scenario. But along with that, that's a beautiful you know, double thing to offer to that past self. Is like, not only do I forgive you for this, but you should be taking up more space. Like exactly, give them the crown. And everything.
I told her thank you. I was like, you went through all that stuff so I could be who I am right now. Right, like thank you for that. Right, yes. Okay, Shannon, I know that we're getting close on time here. I want to make sure that I leave enough time for you to tell everybody where to find your wonderful services and how to connect with you. Yes.
Okay, so you can find me at www.unitylovehealing.com, or you can find me on Instagram, and then there's a link tree from there if you want to look at the podcasts or the website or testimonials or anything else. It's unity.s.love on Instagram. So you can find me on there. And I think there's also maybe a link in the link tree or on my website too. Like email me if you just have a question or you just want to chat. Like maybe you don't want to book a session, but you have something you want to talk about. Like I'm very open for all of that. Like I said, I love interactions. So yeah, that's where you find me.
And I have had a session with Shannon, and it was life-changing. Like, Shannon is such a beautiful soul, divine white light angel. So I highly recommend following her and getting a reading from her, a session from her. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
And I want to say thank you so much for everybody that joined in today, that tuned in and was leaving us all the wonderful comments and questions, and to everybody who will be watching this in the future. And thank you, Shannon. I am so honored that you came on.
And thank you so much for having me. I don't know if I was like shell shocked when I first came on, if I even thanked you, but thank you so much. I was looking forward to this very much. This has been beautiful and wonderful and magical. All the things I could hope for. So thank you. And obviously you are fabulous as well.
Thank you.
I still think about our session often. I know your watchers already know all of that, but I just want to sing your praises back because you are also a huge light in my life.
Oh, thank you. Beautiful mirror reflections.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, Shannon. This is wonderful. And we will talk to everybody later. Bye.
Bye.